Hello again, friends. Our Sunday video coming again on Monday. Again, my sincere apologies and thank you to everyone who is sending in comments, interesting and otherwise, support and gratitude. Stephen Manning, the Integrity Ireland Association, S.O.S, speaks for itself. Also, supposedly Stephen on Sunday. One day we'll get back on schedule, but I simply have so much on my plate, my friends. Anyway, today it's quite an interesting one today. I hope you'll find this is our sort of weekly update. It is to do with current events, but today we're centering the conversation on the topic of when religion goes wrong. And the subtitles here today: faith or delusion, virtue or violence, holy or horrific, church or corporation, suffer the little children, as you know from your Bible, or make the children suffer. And in addition to this, we're going to be speaking briefly about who owns your church or country, God or the other guy, and what the giveaway signs are. So with that mouthful on board, let's get going, guys. And again, thank you very much to everyone. We're open actually with a slide of thanks. As many of you would have seen if you're following us on Facebook, there are different platforms. Some facilitate the exchange of comments and stuff better than others. But anyway, we're on, at the end of this presentation, you'll see all locations where we put up information. Feel free to join us. But I just wanted to mention that last the 25th of March was the anniversary, third anniversary, that plays into our presentation here today, because there are 2 or 3 events that have just happened on that same date, which at least it's a link it's worth talking about. But I don't know if you can see at the bottom here, friends. Let's see if I can do this in such a way that we can read it. Yes. When I took this now, it's up at over 700 now. 700 people at least came in and made comments and views, and then we had at least one here at 160. I think is up now. It's more than that now. But again, the most sincere thank you to everybody, because as anybody who has suffered personal grief in their life will likely testify, and in particular in our situation, and apart from the good well wishes of all our friends, Danny and I were made homeless on the same week that Noriko passed 3 years ago, and we literally had to just walk away from everything, our house, our possessions, everything. We had to sell most of it, and it's been quite a lonely time, apart from, like I said, there's support of good friends. So I won't overdo it, guys, over egg it, but thank you so much for all of those. And what I'd like to do is start by maybe a slightly entertaining slide here, but it does lead into the topic today about marriage, because I'm not sure now how many of you were aware of this, but that's myself and Noriko when we were married. The picture on the right is the marriage ceremony itself, and if you'll notice in the background, there's lots of international flags. And part of the reason for this was that, interestingly, I thought that I was actually going to become a Catholic priest. And I was convinced by friends I met that it was a more noble vocation to be in a, quote, God-centered or holy, or at least trying to be holy, family. That was a better calling, the higher calling, than to be a celibate priest. I mulled it over, and then through some various coincidences, and you know me, I love my coincidences and the symbolism, and when these things happen in my life, I'm always paying attention. But anyway, the long and the short of it was that I agreed to what was in effect an arranged marriage, and met up with Noriko. She was working in El Salvador at the time as a missionary, and to cut a long story short, we eventually were married in 1997. And the picture on the left there, and you'll see why this will come into play later on in the presentation. The picture on the left was my best attempt at our sort of formal wedding, not banquet, of course, but we had a presentation, and we did a little speech and all that sort of stuff. This was in Alaska, That was my best efforts, my best attempts to actually create what you might call an Irish national uniform, because there's Noriko in her lovely kimono, and we had a number of guests from various different locations and countries that came all dressed in their different attire. So I went down the local charity shop and found a red kilt, a sort of a military-looking shirt, the green tie, and a couple of epaulets. We stitched on bits onto the shirt and that and the lanyard, and that's a knee-length cloak hanging down my back there, so a little bit like a piper or something like that. But anyway, I thought you might find that marginally entertaining. But the interesting part was it was what you might call a religious marriage. In other words, we didn't go the traditional Western route where you find someone and there's romantic attachment and it's impulses and it's romantic love. No, this was very much based on a mutual love of God, if you like, and as best we understood it at the time. That's why I have the heading at the top there, a marriage based in faith, a question mark. That was the idea behind it. And the idea again was that as a couple centered on principles that are beyond romantic love, pure romantic love. And I'm not saying they don't always work out, and of course they do, and there's many happy couples around the world to testify to that. But when you enter a marriage in a selfless rather than a selfish way, because if you think about it logically, when you're drawn or attracted to someone because of what they do for you, that's ultimately a selfish inclination, and that's the opposite of what you call agape love or true love or unconditional love. So that was the idea behind this. So the question is raised then. I've just brought these out. We're going to keep it running quite quickly today, guys. And if you need to, you can stop, freeze the screen, come back and read in more depth. But these are just 4 headings from the news media. The top one left, 70 Christians beheaded at a Christian church. This is in the Democratic Republic of Congo by a militia who called themselves something like the Democratic Liberation Front, with religious overtones. My comments there: holy religion, God at work, or someone else. But why and how? There in the middle, where did it all start? The origins of the Arab-Israeli conflict. I've done presentations on this before, explaining how it actually goes back to the Cain and Abel conflict. Literally, the symbolism draws it right through the Abrahamic traditions to that. The Catholic Church sexual abuse scandal, which we all know about. And then at the bottom there, Hindus, Muslims clash in India's Haryana as trouble spreads. Now, again, this is just to remind us that whatever religion may be at its best, there are many, many occasions where it is not obviously good or holy. And certainly if there's a God out there that we can relate to as some sort of benign, holy, pure, good source, then certainly God's hand doesn't appear to be involved here, does it? So now, here we go. Men of God are just CEOs of international institutions. Those of you who follow me regularly will know that I've been speaking a lot about this lately, the pyramids, the diabolical pyramids, and how nearly all institutions are trapped in a model of operation, which is, whether they like it or not, it's evil by definition. On the scale of good and evil, it tips more towards the evil end of the scale than the good, precisely because of the parameters and the requirements of doing business in today's world. And make no mistake here, this is Justin Welby, the Archbishop, or what's his title? Anyway, he's the Archbishop of in England, Primate of all England, all this sort of stuff. And he resigned because basically he was caught out covering up, or at least not taking any action against pedophiles within the Anglican Church. Now, there's enough evidence out there now, guys, for us not to keep hammering this home. Clearly, this is a syndrome within religious institutions, convents, industrial schools, any place where children are captured, if you like. There seems to be a preponderance of these sexual abuse cases. And as no doubt they'll keep coming to the surface, guys, okay? Over there on the right, the much-loved Pope John Paul, great charismatic Catholic leader, he too allegedly covered up child abuse in the Polish Catholic Church and sent away offending priests to other jurisdictions to avoid a scandal, etc., etc. I'm just making the point, guys, making the point. Keep one eye on the little symbol top right as we go through, guys. That's the original principle symbol, and it'll all start to make sense. So here we go. So Welby, what sort of a person was he? Well, according to some sources, the amazing life story of Justin Welby, he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, much admired. So let's assume that he's a decent man, okay? But then he says he was overwhelmed by the number of child abuse allegations that he was informed about. Not good enough, Mr. Welby. Absolutely not good enough, okay? And then down at the bottom here, the Church of England forgave paedophiles and allowed them to continue what they were doing. It's not your place, Mr. Welby, you or your colleagues or Catholic priests or any other members of the religious hierarchies to be forgiving horrendous crimes against children, especially when you then facilitate them to continue doing so. This is unbelievable. I mean, like I say, I believe there's a special place in hell for the people who have been involved in this. So I want to make a point here again, right over on the top right. Churches and charities are not exempt from evil outcomes if they adopt a diabolical methodology and structure in order to integrate with the system and the world. We've talked about this before. So basically what I'm saying here is that if you see churches and charities, okay, and I use churches and charities because automatically if you talk about large institutions, one assumes, unless you've experienced differently, one assumes that churches and charities at the very least must have a higher ethical and moral standard than perhaps big tobacco or big pharma or, you know, the military industrial complex, okay? You'd expect them at least to be pushing the heads of these organizations, the bishops, the archbishops, the popes. You'd expect them to be pushing for, you know, Christ-like standards and morality. And we're only talking here about the Christian churches, of course, okay? Now, the little man there on the left, the little red man there, that's my diagram of a standard man, okay, with the three little circles there represent spirit, mind, and body, okay? I keep talking about this. Concept, plan, and action, you know, okay? Your spirit, your mind, and your body, which equates equally then to God, feminine, masculine, and it matches up with chakras and everything, as we'll soon see. Now, I'm suggesting that when you become the CEO of any large corporation or any large organization, most of the time you're required to integrate and communicate and manage in collaboration with other worldly systems. And as a consequence, that's what the arrow is pointing at there. Do you respond to your conscience? That's the little white circle at the top there, your conscience, your spirit, or do you prioritize the dark, necessary objectives of protecting the institution? In this case, not doing anything about pedophilia because it will ruin the reputation of the church. Not good enough, guys. Absolutely not good enough. And the same thing goes now for the woke agenda. And I've only got a little bit about this today, guys. We'll go back into religion almost straight away. But I just had to put this slide in here. Here's this gentleman here. I'm sorry I haven't got a quote for them. This man, I usually do. I put a little logo up to show where the source came from. But anyway, this nurse is being investigated by the National Health Service in England for misgendering a convicted sex attacker. All right, on top right. When nurse Jennifer inadvertently called a burly 6-foot transgender pedophile Mr., the sex offender attacked her and called her the N-word 3 times. So guess who was investigated by the National Health Service and labeled a danger to the public? Now, this is incredible, guys, but those of you who think that things like this are borderline insane, you're on the right track. You're absolutely on the right track, my friends. But it's not insanity. It's actually evil at work, but you have to understand the formula. Hopefully, through these presentations, we're starting to get through to people and it's all starting to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, okay? Because to do it all in one go would just overwhelm everybody. But bit by bit, okay? So we're just talking mainly about the religious aspect today. Now, this slide we're going to have to spend a few minutes on. Again, feel free to come back and freeze it if you need to give this more thought. But this one now, it'll be a bit hard for most people to digest in a couple of minutes, especially religious people, because you should know that I spent some years in a seminary. I was training for a while within Catholic ministry. Then I transferred over to studying world religions at the master's degree level and things like that. I went then into the psychology of religion and so on. So this has been an area of study for me for quite some time. And I like to think that I have some insights that may not be common. So looking at this, let's have a look here now. So beliefs are ratified by the truth, not the other way around. Okay, sorry, there's a bit of the word missing. Okay, now this is a quote from me. Beliefs are ratified by the truth, not the other way around. Now, before we look at this slide, let me bring you all back just for a second to myself. I'm just going to do a little demonstration here, which I've done in physical presentations that I've done when people come to, to listen when we do presentations. It's very simple. I just want to make a clear distinction between a belief and a reality, or between something you choose to have faith in or you choose to believe in and something you know as a fact. Okay, so for example, I could hold up my glasses here and I could say to you, these are made of chocolate. Now, at first glance, you might say, well, it could be a very clever cake maker has made a pair of glasses out of chocolate. It's possible, I suppose. But ultimately, I'm asking you to believe something without proof. And the only way really you can disprove me is by tasting the glasses and saying, no, that's not chocolate, that's plastic, or whatever it might be. All right. Now, at that point, so for a minute, you decide, okay, I'll believe Stephen. He said his glasses are made of chocolate. I'll believe him. Until I get the opportunity to find out, because it's a bit of a silly claim to make, but I'll believe him because I don't want to offend him. But as soon as I get a chance, I'm going to taste that pair of glasses to see what they're made of. So this is a little thing I did here, guys. Right now, in my hand, I have the pearl of great price. Question: do you believe me?
I am.
Danny's in the background there. Danny's just called out. I am. He always believes his dad. Okay. All right. So the pearl of great price. I don't hold my fist too close to the camera. It looks like I might be trying to assault somebody, something they threw me in jail for before, even when I didn't do it. Anyway, so the simple question is this, okay, I've told you I've got something in my hand. I could say it's a diamond. I could say it's a mouse. I could say anything at all. And let's assume for a moment 50% of the listeners believe that I've got something precious in my hand. 50% of the people believe that I don't. All right. Now, the question here is, so we have two groups of people, let's say, in the room. One they believe me when I say I've got something precious in my hand. The other 50% say, no, they don't believe it. Okay. The question now I ask people is, say, what happens if I never open my hand? It's very simple, but it's quite profound. If I never open my hand, both parties in the room are stuck with their belief for the rest of their lives. At any point in the future, if someone said, did you ever know, did Stephen actually have a diamond or a pearl of great price in his hand or not? Yes or no? They have to say, well, I believe he did, or I believe he didn't. But it's a belief, right? It's a belief. They don't know. They can't say with confidence, absolutely he did or absolutely he didn't, because they don't know. So what I then do in the presentation is I open my hand, and if you can see in the camera, I've got a little coin here. All right. It's not exactly the pearl of great price. It's not a mouse. It's not a diamond. Okay. So half of the room have been proven right in their beliefs, and the other half have been proven wrong in their beliefs. But again, something very interesting has happened. Both of their belief systems have disappeared. Now, please think about this for a minute, okay? They've disappeared because it's been replaced by knowledge. They saw that I only had a coin in my hand, so they don't need to have any beliefs, right? So this is the point I'm trying to make very, very briefly, guys. Truth, as I keep saying, truth is its own witness, okay? We only need beliefs and belief systems and organizations and institutions as long as we do not know the truth. Now, arguably, the truth is a huge, it's a huge concept, all right? And hopefully we're all learning parts of the truth and we're trying to share it and all the rest of it. But incrementally, as you learn more and more truth, not beliefs now, not faiths, truths, as you learn and experience truths, you can incrementally let go of the beliefs that were there prior to you having that knowledge. I hope that makes clear sense, guys, because again, I'm watching the time. We've got to keep pressing on. And now we're going to come to this slide because this backs straight onto what I just said, guys. All right. So I'm going to posit 4 questions. All right. Question number 1, which might surprise you all, guys, if you ask these questions of your local priest or imam or rabbi or Buddhist priest, monk, or whoever, or anybody who's a devout religionist. Ask them, and I'll almost guarantee you, unless they've spoken to me personally or seen my presentations, I can guarantee you almost 100% that they will not only will they not be able to answer these questions either correctly but they are most likely they've never actually given them any real thought. And it's a very interesting exercise given the influence that religion has in the world today. So first of all, when did religion begin? That's the first question. Question 2, what is the purpose for religion? Because if we don't know what the purpose for religion is, how can we measure whether or not our particular religions are meeting that purpose? You understand, guys? And don't try and answer the questions yet, just now, friends, if you bear with me, because I could stretch this out easily to an hour or 2 hours discussion if I was in a debate with someone. But if you just bear with me for this. Third question, is there any religion in heaven or nirvana or whatever you want to call the magic place that we go to where the source and all happiness or God or Allah is, okay? And the obvious answer to that is there's no point in having religion if you're intimately right there in the presence of the divine, is there? So the answer to that question, I don't mind giving you, question number 3, is no. And fourth, in what circumstances is faith necessary? Well, we've just covered that, guys, haven't we? We've just covered that one by explaining you only need faith when you don't know something, okay? So I like to think of faith as a temporary, excuse my scruffiness tonight, a temporary holding position, if you like, whilst you go out and you try and find out what the truth is. Because we have to, if someone says, all right, Stephen, I'll meet you for coffee tomorrow morning down at the cafe, yeah? Naturally, I believe that that person intends to be there the next day. And I act on that presumption. So if someone says to me, is Fred going to be in the cafe tomorrow? I can say, I expect so. I believe he will be because he said he was going to be. Now, I might arrive at the cafe and he doesn't turn up. Then I have to amend. If somebody else says, well, do you believe Fred will be there tomorrow? I'll say, well, I'm beginning to doubt it now because last time he didn't turn up. You see what I mean? So there's times to have faith and to have beliefs, and there's times to pursue knowledge. I would argue that one of the great letdowns of contemporary religions is the fact that most people don't understand this, and they're quite willing and happy and able to live in a state of unknowing, of believing in suppositions and sometimes quite outlandish delusional ideas that they could possibly put to rest by finding out more truth and informing themselves. We're living in the age of wisdom, guys, in the age of knowledge. So I'm saying there's no excuse for us not spending more time out there. Okay, so I then say, and we'll come to the other 2 questions before, when did religion begin and what's the purpose of religion? But because it's really important, we understand that. So religions that are based primarily upon speculative, subjective beliefs fall second to those religions based upon self-evident principles. All right, so in other words, more truth, less beliefs. Okay, more self-evident truth, less beliefs. That's a better form. And of course, objective unifying truth itself, of course, which knowledge is or should be the quest of all religions, trumps all beliefs, suppositions, opinions, or beliefs. Very simply, in other words, if we can find a truth, for example, if we can all agree, having tasted the frames, that these glasses are not made of chocolate, okay? If we can all agree with that, if we can all agree that I didn't have the pearl of great price in my hand earlier, why? Because we've all seen it, or we've all tasted the frame and we know it's not chocolate. We can all agree on that. And guess what? We don't argue about it, do we? Once we agree with stuff, we stop arguing about it. What's the main problem with religions, world religions, historically? They're all bloody well fighting each other all the time. And what are they fighting about? They're fighting about what they believe, not about what they know. Because once you know stuff and once you can prove it, and it's self-evident, there's no point in arguing anymore, is there? Right. So that's one of the major problems, I would say, with religions as we know it. So now we'll press on a bit quicker. So now we come back to the Enoch Burke story, because again, remember I said a few minutes ago, religions that are only faith-based versus religions that are principle-based. The principled ones tend to top the ones that are only faith-based. And the problem we have here, and this was a slide from a previous presentation, the problem we have here, this is the Wilson School, or Enoch Burke has been, he spent 500 plus days in prison, right? Because he objected to being told by the principal, again, the principal of the school, who is he? He's at the top of a hierarchy there, right? He's supposed to be the figurehead carrying out the Christian ethos. Instead, he turns around and orders his staff to comply with what? The diktats from the globalists. Why? Because as the principal of a school, no doubt, he is embedded in many of these systems and feels obliged to protect the system instead of the ethos under which he's supposed to be operating, the Christian ethos. I hope that makes sense, my friends, okay? And there's my quotes on the right. You can read them for yourself. Still with the Burkes. So here we have, this is now John McDowell, the most reverend, I nearly forgot to say, John McDowell, the Archbishop of Armagh. Those of you who saw this slide and these videos, please go and look them up on the internet. This was the Burke family going into the synod, or the annual gathering, excuse me, of the Church of Ireland, and asking some simple biblically based questions that resonate around the fact that they've been abandoned by their church, which should be there supporting them and standing up for them and fighting against the government and these corrupt courts and the Attorney General and the school, indeed, pulling the funding from the school or whatever they have to do, because Enoch Burke is absolutely right according to the Bible, right? According to the Bible. This is a Bible school. What on earth? Why the contradiction? Well, I hope we're going to explain this to you as you go through. They were assaulted and everything during the synod. It was shocking, appalling, you know. Now we find out that poor Enoch, who had managed to save up about 40,000 in his life, which is not a huge amount of money, you know, and they probably live very frugal. I don't see them out bar hopping at the weekends or anything like that, you know, or flash cars or, you know, but he refused to endorse transgenderism in his school. His entire bank account is now being seized by the Irish courts. And again, the court service, bottom right, court service is not even, we think it's part of the structures of government. It's not. It's a pseudo-independent organization that uses staff from the Department of Justice that we're paying. They're on the stock market. They're investing in dodgy funds and everything. It's a franchise. It's another rip-off business. And we, like lambs to the slaughter, keep trundling into these courts in front of these utterly corrupt judges. Here's another one here, a man called David Nolan, I believe. That's our book, The Criminality in the Irish Courts, top right. He's not in that particular book because we hadn't crossed him at the time. He's a relatively new appointee. But he's same ilk as nearly all of the others. And again, I haven't met every single judge up in the four courts, but I've met a lot of them. And by and large, they are sociopaths by inclination. That means they are selfish, greedy, looking out for themselves. They don't have empathy or compassion for other people. Certainly, very few of them display any notion of Christian principles. And they've been put in those positions because they're basically politically appointees, which runs against the Bangalore principles. Those of you who know that, you're not supposed to be appointing judges because of their political affiliations. That's what happens in Ireland. It makes a laughing stock of the notion of the rule of law. My encouragement to Enoch and his family is, please, guys, don't give up. I believe that good and right, and indeed God, is absolutely on your side. And what you're doing is absolutely right. The victory here, as I keep saying, is the exposure of an utterly rotten and corrupt government and judicial system. Now, here's a little bit of a diagram which basically explains more or less what I've just explained. There you are on the left. People of conscience will struggle within diabolical structures. Enoch Burke, if you like, he's the little guy bottom right in the pyramid, all right? He has managed to maintain his conscience. Why? Because his faith is based on principles, on Christian principles. Organizations such as charities, churches, governments, courts, service operations, international corporations, they don't have a conscience the same way that an individual has a conscience. I hope this is clear, friends. They don't have a conscience. They operate to a different set of rules. A lot of it is based in deception and manipulation and fraud. And most of all, the people that work within these organizations are required to a greater or lesser degree to surrender their consciences or their souls. That's the little white circle at the top. So the guy on the left with the yellow arrow in the pyramid, he will advance because he's willing to sell his soul, basically. Cut off his conscience and do as he's told. He'll get promoted. Okay, ambition, greed, and service to the system or the organization. Someone like Enoch Burke, who has a principled stand, will be ejected unceremoniously. And because he then complained about the ejection to another larger pyramid, i.e. the courts and the Irish government, they too are ejecting him any way they can, imprison him, vilify him, and now penalize him and raid his bank account. And this should trouble all of us, guys, because if they can do it to him, they can do it to anyone. All right. At the bottom, just as a coincidental aside, the notion of a Greek soul was fire and water. That's what they thought, the ancient Greeks. They had this concept of a soul. They thought it was made of fire and water. I want you to notice this, the reds and the blues here, this idea, the liquids and the fire and the liquid. Okay, it comes into play in a moment. They're above it. And what do they call it? What do they call the soul? Honest to God, guys, their name for soul was atom, A-T-O-M. And there above it, you see an atom. Look at the similarity now between my diagrams of the male and the female bonded in union, right? That's God's love, if you like. That's the same as the electron going around the proton and the neutron, okay? Interesting stuff, is it not? It's all to do with that logo top right, the original principle. So, question. Is civilization itself a good thing? Well, very simply, and to keep this pumping fast, okay, I just want to point out the fact that there was a state of perfection according to the mythological story of the Garden of Eden. There was a state of perfection where everything was hunky-dory and we walked and talked naked and unashamed with God in the garden, or at least Adam and Eve did, okay? Now, that's the diagram there on the left, that little diagram on the left, where I'm trying to pull this up for you. Here we are, the diagram there. God, Eve, and Adam. You see it down the middle. All right, what does that equate to? Concept, plan, and action, spirit, mind, and body. You've heard me talk about this before, guys. That was the original order of things. Then something went wrong. All right, Satan enters the picture, or the darkness. Yeah, the light goes out. That's the black, red, and black S there. That's the satanic influence. He tempts Eve, and she in turn tempts Adam. The roles are reversed. And basically what happened then is you have his story. Whose story? Cain and Satan's story. Not God's story anymore. Not even Adam's story anymore. This is the story then. And what happens, as we know, Cain kills Abel. That's the picture in the background there. Okay? Now, this is the point I'm trying to make here. If you go in and check your resources and do a little bit of study, guys, you'll find out that it is Cain, after he leaves the Garden of Eden and God discovers he's murdered Abel and everything. And he's banished. He goes off to a place called the land of Nod, right? And which is out somewhere probably near Iran or out that way. And he starts the first civilization. That's according to the records. He's the one who starts the first civilization, begging the question, is civilization itself, as we know it today, with all of our pyramid structures and corporations and governments and massive church institutions and big pharma and big tobacco and everything, a whole bunch of criminally inclined people basically telling us what we should and shouldn't do or can and cannot do. Is that the way it's meant to be? That's the thing. Now here at the bottom right, we have Ishmael and Isaac, the sons of Abraham, the Arabs and the Israelis. Please go and look for that full presentation if you want to know more. The symbolism is massively important. The colors of Cain, the colors of Abel, the original good shepherd. Who else was the good shepherd? Jesus, do you remember? Yeah. And here I managed to find 3 pictures of Cain and Abel in the right colors, the reds and the blues, because the red represents the older brother. All right. Concept like action. He's the strong, powerful guy. Okay. The blue represents the feminine characteristics that such as you'd have if you were looking after lambs and sheep. All right. And obviously the white concept is the source. It's God. So the question is, why did God accept Abel's offering but reject Cain's offering? So we're going back to the first question, when did religion begin? Now, I'm only using Christian biblical sources here, but it's nice. It's a nice example to explain to you. Well, since Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden Eden, and this is a very quick biblical lesson, they were kicked out, but what ultimately happened was the concept or the spirit or the presence of God was taken away. And you're just left with the masculine and the feminine, Adam and Eve, mind and body, 2/3 of the whole. And what's 2/3 in percentage? 66.6%. There's your 666, your mark of the beast, and so on and so forth. It's the absence of God. It's the absence of source. It's the absence of original love. And ever since that time, we've been struggling to try and get back to it. That's what religions are supposed to be doing, getting us back into Eden, not so much physically like march into the place, but in our minds, our hearts, in our attitudes, and the way we organize society. And I'm saying the way we organize society is being along Cain's lines. He's the one that set it all up. And we keep multiplying it, and it's a problem. So why did they refuse the offering? Well, very simply, it was because the offering had to come from Cain through his brother Abel to God. Instead, Cain tried to go direct to God, and God basically said, sorry, sunshine, thank you for trying, but I have to reject your offering. But if you do the right thing, everything will be fine. But he doesn't do the right thing. Instead, he murders his brother. And as a consequence, that the previous slide, as I showed you there a minute ago, that's how the colors get reversed. Yeah. And all of a sudden now you have the masculine dominating the feminine, which is the story of human history: violence, greed, aggression, war, domination, exploitation, armies, empires, and they're still at it today, guys. And that's what these pyramids. That's why it's so difficult to maintain one of these diabolical pyramid structures and still maintain a genuinely good ethos, good sort of spiritual ethos, even though that term is. So here's a few of them on the right, guys, that are equate to this concept, plan, or action: spirit, mind, and body; source, feminine and masculine; God, Eve, and Adam; theos, sophos, and logos; electron, neutron, and proton; air, water, and fire; gas, liquid, and solid; Eden, tree of knowledge, and tree of life, and many, many more. We're not going to do them today, guys. I'll do them in other presentations for you. I'm just hammering home the point. And interestingly, this original principle, top right, that I'm showing you, not only aligns with the chakra system, as you can see, the white, the blue, and the red are in the same orders. Yeah, spirit, mind, and body. You have the crown chakra, which is usually white or rainbow colors; the communication chakra, the mind, the voice here in the throat area; and finally the red chakra, the energy source, the sexual energy area, the action chakra. Okay, and it also corresponds, believe it or not, to the energies of light that we can see, with the numbers 400 and 700, which are the size of the light waves at each end, correspond to all of these numbers, which you keep seeing in scripture repeated over and over and over. 700, for example, examples of the number 70 or 700, I think, in the Christian Bible. Why? The number 440, look them up, guys. It's astounding. There are websites out there that will show you the multiples of this, but hardly anybody, nobody that I know, has yet discovered the connection with the properties of light itself, which is the energies of the universe, what we're all made of. Could this be the original blueprint, the key to unlock the code of what religion is supposed to be all about and how it's supposed to be operating? So now we go back to Cain and Abel. This is an African picture of Cain and Abel, with Cain in red, again, murdering his brother Abel. And my question: how civilized has civilization been? Something's not right. And here at the bottom, the text clearly associates Cain. This is not my text, somebody else. A name almost synonymous with sin and fratricide, the murder of his younger brother, with one of the giant steps in human development. The formation of urban society with all of its economic and political ramifications, such as the development of trade, resident crafts, and centralized government. So now we have just an inkling, a notion that perhaps the our understanding of what society is today is actually based on a concept that came from the original murderer who had the spirit of Satan himself in him. Wow, wow, wow. Is it all starting to make a bit of sense? Could it be possible? Could it be remotely possible that the structures of human society, ever since the time of the fall, beyond which we have no recollection, we've got nothing except for the mythological Garden of Eden and that story to tell us what it might have been all about. But history and all of recorded history has been based on this Cain dynamic, this what I call the diabolical model that requires you, if you're to succeed in it, to sell your soul. Interesting, is it not? I hope you I hope you agree with me, folks, friends. So here's another slide here. Who is guiding or directing what? What are the motives and principles? Well, again, I'm sort of hammering on the same sort of theme here. So on the left, you have the individual, the figure who is trying to maintain integrity, spirit, mind, and body integrity in the right order, and is arguably, and can arguably, therefore, correct directly to source or to God, yeah, through whatever mediums you might think are necessary, whether you believe it's necessary to go through religious procedures, principles, the Messiah, and all that. But this is the model. The original model was like this. It was replaced then by a diabolical model, which wants everyone and everything reduced to the lowest and most base common denominator, and thus utterly dependent upon the system and those that run it, okay? Which I'm suggesting, as you can see with the icon there, is diabolical, okay? Sovereignty would be the opposite over here on the left. Individual, familial, societal, national, and cultural sovereignty, that is, based upon a spiritual awareness that we are children of God. Children of God don't need false parents and false gods to be telling them what to do, right? Such as we have these diabolical structures. And unfortunately, a lot of people enter these structures thinking they're going to be serving God. As it says there from the Bible, thou cannot serve God and mammon. Make a choice, my friends. This is what Enoch Burke and his family appear to be doing. And that's why you see this drama playing out now on the world stage. It's also to a certain extent what, and I keep saying it, the Trump administration, whatever faults they may have, this will be the great challenge for them. Can they maintain their individual personal integrity and still work within a diabolical framework, even though they're trying to dismantle it? Or at least they seem to be starting that process. I hope to God somebody sends this, helps them understand this, because that's the key. They've got to recognize the limitations that are put upon them when they get inside these. And, you know, even if they, as they try to dismantle them, ultimately, we should try and return to a world where all of our energies, and if we have to have governments of any size or sort, their energies should be devoted to raising up the levels of awareness and knowledge of the population, so that they can make their own decisions in a more better informed, unique way based upon their own sovereignty, their own conscience, which will be well informed because they'll be surrounded by good stuff, not all of this diabolical stuff. Okay, how are we doing? Got to push on a bit quick here. So now I'm making a point. Coincidence or calculated cultural chaos. This is Prince Charles and Camilla, King Charles and Queen Camilla, just making a big show out of getting dates ready for the ending of the fast of Ramadan, the Muslims and everything, all right? Now, again, I'm making a point here, and I don't want anyone to come after me and say I'm anti-Muslim. I'm not at all, okay? I'm anti the violent excess of Islam, the same as I would be about the violent excesses of Christianity or fundamentalism or the ignorance or the foolishness of certain belief systems. I'd be against all that. But let's make a point here. What are these people up to? Is this about tolerance and diversity, or is it about racism and bigotry? Here's Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, you know, labeling anybody who challenges the diabolical pyramid on the right as far right and racist. Now, they're up to something, all right? I ask the question, or make the statement. Political figures, royalty, compromised celebrities, the mainstream media, and super rich globalists all inhabit the dark sociopathic triangle at the head of the diabolical pyramid. So what's their plan? To use religion at its worst to sow disharmony and hate? How else are they going to continue to convince us to keep voting for them, tolerating them, and even admiring them as they angle to profit further from their sinister plans to make themselves our eternal lords and masters? This is replacement theory, but it's Satan trying to replace God. Satan and his minions and his operators, and most of them are embedded in these structures, my friends. You must pay attention. They're using immigrants and from cultures that can't integrate with ours and religions. And here's Tracy O'Mahony. Please, guys, follow the link top left there, Tracy O'Mahony 81. I think this was is it on TikTok, I believe? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, she highlights the fact that on the 25th of March, again, Ireland is trying to ratify EU laws on immigration that we're not actually bound to. I'll have to go through this quickly. My apologies, Tracy, but please go and look at this for yourself. She does an excellent cover of what's going on. There's me circling the date. You can only just make it out. 6.2 billion Irish punts or euros are being spent by the Irish government for non-government organizations that are not non-government organizations. Where have we seen this before? With US aid, right? And Donald Trump, he's taken them root and branch and he's going after them. We've got the same problem in Ireland, guys. We can't afford to be giving away this amount of money. And I just I checked some of the facts and so on, and I found out, oh yeah, what is it? There it is at the bottom. Let me pull this up for you. There at the bottom, I think it's immigrant.ie. Please go and look at the website. I haven't got time to cover it today, but they have a team, an alleged team, who are drawing down all of this money and everything from the government to advise on immigration studies. The team consists of two people, one of whom is a chairperson or director of a number of other NGOs, previously is an NGO sector. The other guy, a Spanish guy, he's just got a picture there looking charming with a beard, no information about him whatsoever. That's a team. These are the sort of NGOs that are getting paid millions, right? Go and look for them for yourself. And we are all being ripped off, guys. And they're trying to force through now. We have the right to veto these laws in Ireland, but the government is not applying the veto. They're actually capitulating to Ursula von der Leyen and others, as we'll see in these quotes. This has to stop. Irish government are not consulting with or acting in the best interests of the Irish people. That's right. Who owns the country, folks? Us or them? Huh? Ask yourself that question. They know that. We know that. The dogs in the street know that. And the general public are done with immigration. Let's opt out or give us a referendum now. That's the logical thing to do. Give a referendum to the people. But they don't. What they do is they hire these NGOs and these consultants to pretend to be representing the people when they're actually being paid by the government to return results that the government want to hear, which in turn serve their lords and masters, the globalists, the EU, autocrats and all the rest of it. All the ordinary Irish person has is their vote. I didn't vote for this government, but they still got in. So what can I do now to stop this? The government aren't allowing us to vote on this issue. Ireland is full. This government needs to be culled. Rather strong sentiment, but in the sense that, yeah, it needs to be thinned out. It needs to be replaced. Yes, I'd absolutely agree. There's been so much fraud in the electoral process over here as well. I've talked about that previously. I was a victim of myself twice. We proved it. Sent in applications to the government, the electoral board, all of them stitched together in the diabolical pyramid to protect each other. This is Ben Scallon making a very strong point, and the interviewers in England said, first of all, the government's first duty is to look after its own citizens. Ben Scallon, if you don't know about GRIPT, my friends, please look them up. For some reason, I don't know how he's doing it, he manages to get up there front and center and confront the people I call the diabolicals, the politicians, the scammers. He says, politicians seem to be under the misapprehension that they own our countries. They do not. They are elected representatives who have been temporarily bestowed the privilege of managing on behalf of the people and are therefore supposed to be carrying out the will of the people and not the diktats of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, the EU, and or the United Nations. All right, well said, Ben. Keep it up, buddy. Now, I want to point this out. The 10 worst countries in the world for religious freedom are either or and dictatorships, communist regimes, or, I'm sort of sorry to say, Muslim majority states. Now, there's a theme running through here, guys. And again, I just want to make a point. There's a list of them. You know, if you want to check it out for yourself, please go to that Alicia website and you'll see it for yourself. What's the point I'm trying to make here? Well, interestingly, some years ago, I helped this man produce this book. Right, he's a scholar in England, is a Muslim scholar. I'm just going to, you can see it for yourself, and the clash between the Muslim Holy Scripture. Now, we thought, and I'll just read what he says, I invite Muslims as well as non-Muslims to make an unbiased study of the Quran by a new methodology and give credit wherever due. I plead with Muslims to recognize real problems in their authentic literature, to exercise self-restraint in the face of criticism and refrain from responding with a fatwa. To the Western world, I ask not to paint all Muslims with the same brush. A few thousand or more militants who believe in terrorism do not represent the entire billion-strong Muslim community of today's world any more than a few thousand slave traders of the 18th century colonialism represent the entire Judeo-Christian world. Indeed, the Muslim faith, Islam, has sprung from the same original source of monotheism of Abraham, as have Judeo-Christianity, and strangely enough, suffers from the same problems of misrepresentations. Now, I believe some of the text has unfortunately been cut out, guys. I've had this problem when I make the slides, when I convert them, sometimes text goes missing, but you get the idea. So this book was produced in hardback, and it was sent free out to a number of universities. It's a very scholarly study, trust me, guys. We never really pushed to promote it because at the time, to tell the truth, there was always this feeling that, you know what, some lunatic is going to go after the author and try, but actually you couldn't do that, okay? Again, this is a quote on the back. Someone, another scholar, his name is dropped off the end, but that's okay. To my mind, what makes the Quran's challenge to Islam most welcome is the author's desire to avert clashes caused by misunderstandings about Islam today. Illustrating the author's groundbreaking research, this unusual piece of work convincingly acquaints the Muslim as well as the non-Muslim world with what Islam is and what it really means. Syed, the author, very clearly highlights the differences and conflicts which the Muslim Holy Scripture has with the conventional beliefs of Islam. Now, I won't read the rest, guys, because you can read it for yourself, and I'm conscious of the time. I need to make sure we get through everything. Please freeze, read through it. For example, with this paperwork version, I can't remember what it costs now, but it's about a tenner, I think, online. You can get it. That's the paperback version, okay? And those, especially if you feel tensions, if you're a Christian or an Irish person in particular, or an English person, you're feeling tensions with the Muslim world, why not invest a few bob and read this book? Then you can speak authoritatively to, let's say, radical or aggressive or dogmatic Muslims or Islamists on a level playing field. And likewise, I would say to Muslims, please look back at what I said about the origins of religion, the purpose for religion. The purpose for religion is to bring us back to a truth. Once we get to that truth, we will not need religion anymore. Now, you have to understand this, my friends, because once you start putting your particular belief, religious belief system into context, i.e. that it's like you're taking medicine for an ailment. You're not well. You're separated from the deity, from God. We're trying to get back there. Religion is supposed to be helping us do that. And as we incrementally get closer and closer back to personal, intimate union with the divine, we can let go of the rituals and the procedures and the practices like Cain and Abel, the offerings they made to God. Why did they make offerings? Because they couldn't talk to him directly anymore. That's where the first religious practices started, making offerings, then creating rituals, then having prayers. Then we had the 10 Commandments. Why? Because they were all too stupid. Intuitively, they didn't know the difference between right and wrong anymore because they were separated from God for generations by then. So God literally carved it in stone and said, here, just let's start there, and bit by bit, incrementally over the ages, will try and create an environment whereby we can produce prophets and messiahs and whatever it might be to lead us closer back to God. So if you're happy in your religion, you shouldn't be, because God isn't, if I could say that, okay? And I mean that in the same way, if I'm separated from my children and they say, oh, it's fine, I say, come and visit. And they go, oh, no, I'm happy enough just speaking to you on the phone, Dad, or writing you a letter. Well, I'm not that happy with that. I want to hug my children. And I believe, hand on heart, that is God's heart, So please, let's keep religion in context. Now, here we go to another one now. This one's interesting too. Yes. Also on the 25th of March last week, the Japanese government issued dissolution orders against the Unification Church, also known commonly as the Family Federation of World Peace and other names, okay? Derogatorily known as the Moonies, right? Again, I've only got a couple of minutes, so I have to just bang this out quick. It was through this mechanism that I met my wife, Noriko. That's why I said this has relevance. So, in as much as I love my wife dearly and my children, I have to acknowledge that good and profound association. Now, I would argue as well that in as much as the unification movement, let's call it that, which actually the founder, Sun Myung Moon, never wanted it to become another church. In fact, he was trying to set up an organization to bring all the Christian churches together. That's what he was trying to do. And eventually, the membership of his own union all got frustrated with all the Christian churches and basically said, no, thank you. We're going to set up our own denomination now. And of course, I'm saying, in a way, to a certain extent, that has added, instead of subtracted from the problem, it's added to it, because now you have another church arguing that they're absolutely right and possibly other people are not so right. But I will say this, guys, and I say this in all sincerity, I've studied a lot of world religions, as I said earlier. Out of all of them, I would say that the Divine Principle, the book at the top there, which is sort of like a testament, a New Testament for the unification movement, it explains most of the baffling things that we read about in the Bible in such a logical, pragmatic, step-by-step, scientific way that I would argue that of all of the texts, certainly that I've read, and accepting now this original principle that I'm working on myself, all of the texts I've read in the past, there is more that draws me to the Divine Principle than to anything else that I've read, just because I'm a logical thinker. I like the symbolism, all the patterns in history and all sorts of stuff. So if you get a chance, maybe if you're interested at all, look this up. There's a community in Dublin that would be willing to help you and all the rest of it. And I owe much of what I've learned about the original principle, I owe from my reading of the Divine Principle. So I'm going to bump on now, guys. Let's see, last couple of minutes. Yes, this statement from the Gospel of St. Philip, which is out of the Nag Hammadi library. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found. Truth not come into the world naked, but in symbols and images. The world cannot receive truth in any other way. We're down to the last minute or so. Please think about this diagram. You'll have to freeze it and look back at it, guys. It's my way of explaining that even as a church on the right-hand side, let's say you're a small church, you're centered in a good ethos, the concept is good, the plans are good, the actions are good. However, as you try to integrate with the global hierarchy, the diabolical hierarchies that do not belong to God anymore, you have to surrender some of those values. That's why we see all of this bad stuff happening. So, I'll put that one in next week, guys, those last two. There's where you can reach some of our other platforms, guys. You can, if you want to, and if you want to support us, this final slide here, crisiscultcoup.com. If you go there, if you want to support us, guys, we obviously appreciate it. My first request is that you buy the books. God bless everybody. Must go. And thank you again for all of your love and support and encouragement. See you next week. There we are. I have to press another button.